Okay. I'm going to start volume 24. The prologue. Ehrenfest's game of Ditter against Dunkelfelder had come to an end. There had been some unexpected developments, such as an interruption by the Sovereign Knight's order, and the royal family's decision to question all the involved parties, but the match had ultimately ended with Ehrenfest's victory. Rosemine would not be married to Dunkelfelder. Matthias sighed in relief, glad to have protected his sworn lady, but it was too soon for him to rest easy. He had noticed a faint scent during that questioning, something that everybody else had most likely missed. "Can I ask you all to come with me to a meeting room?" Matthias said. "I wish to discuss today's events." He had gone around the dining hall to gather together Lorenz, Lenore, and Judith, as well as Brunhilde, who had also participated in the dinner match. "What about me?" asked the young Theodore, but he served Lady Rosemine only within the Royal Academy. His true lord was Guy Kernberger, so he could not participate in these important discussions. However, Matthias was hesitant to be so direct. He knew how upset Theodore would get about being left out, so he instead said, "I would like to keep this among those who participated in the dinner game." "Will you not want the perspective of someone who was in the audience?" Theodore asked. Matthias fell into thought, trying to figure out how he could get Theodore to give up without hurting his feelings, but then Lenore heaved an impatient sigh. "Theodore, as you only serve Lady Rosemine here in the Royal Academy, we must draw a line. We do not want our every word to be leaked to Guy Kernberger. Or would you like to commit to becoming Lady Rosemine's retainer?" Theodore had a lot of potential as a knight, and while with Rosemine already having a shortage of guards, her retainers were eager for him to join them formally. But after a moment spent in thought, Theodore refused the offer. "My goal is to become a knight of Kernberger," he said. After dinner, Rosemine's 5 retainers who had participated in the game of Ditter gathered in her meeting room. Matthias confirmed that the door was shut tightly behind them before turning to Brunhilde. "How is Lady Rosemine?" Brunhilde was an apprentice attendant and could access Rosemine's room on the girls' floor. Matthias could still remember how ghastly pale Rosemine had looked while she was being carried away. He wanted some kind of update on her situation, like whether she was feeling better or whether she had at least awakened. "She is not doing very well," Brunhilde replied. "Her illness resulted partly from her drinking too many rejuvenation potions, so the means of recovery is not an option here. All we can do is wait for her to awaken. In truth, she developed a fever while we were eating. It seems she is struggling even to breathe." At the moment, Riarda was off eating her own dinner, while Lazletta and Grisha were placing a cold washcloth on Lady Rosemine's forehead and wiping away her sweat. Brunhilde grew increasingly pale as she continued, "If only I had not fainted during the match, I could have stopped Lady Rosemine from consuming too many potions." "How many did she consume?" "She only consumed, as far as I know, she only drank 2. Is one her limit or something? Or how many did she drink that they didn't mention?" Her voice was full of regret, but an arch attendant who had received so little combat training could not be blamed for having fainted in the face of an attack from Marstock, Dunkelfelder's strongest apprentice knight. It was an understandable reaction. If anything, her priority had been to stay inside Lady Rosemine's shield, and she had not been... Or an understandable reaction, if anything. Her priority had been to stay inside Rosemine's shield, and she had not been trained to defend herself or avoid attacks. The apprentice attendants had only been expected to manage the rejuvenation potions and recognize the different types of offensive magic tools. In that case, Judith said, "I'm to blame for failing as a guard knight. I allowed Lord Lestalot to get into the shield and was unable to protect Lady Rosemine. If I had not taken out my weapon, then I wouldn't have been knocked out of the shield. How would you have defended Rosemine without the weapon out, though?" She was shaking her head in disappointment, but her expression clouded. But Matthias did not think she was at fault either. Any guard knight worth their salt would take out their weapon upon seeing their lord or lady in danger. It was precisely what they were trained to do, and something they did without thinking. "I expect that anyone in your situation would have been knocked out of Shutsaria's shield," Matthias said. "In fact, you would have failed as a guard knight if you hadn't tried to protect her." Lorenz nodded. "Even if you had stayed inside to protect her from Lord Lestalot, Lady Rosemine probably would have drunk a rejuvenation potion anyway. We needed her shield to protect us from the intruder's attacks, and as a place to heal the knights." Brunhilde frowned. "Lorenz, that is precisely what we should have stopped her from doing. Lord Ferdinand surely would have scolded us all as failures of retainers were he here." Neither Matthias nor Lorenz understood what she meant. Was this really worthy of such a harsh criticism? Matthias remembered that Rosemine had used Shutsaria's shield to protect the students during the Turnish Buffon attack last year. and they hadn't been criticized for that. On this occasion, the shield had been absolutely necessary for warding off the attacks from above, healing the wounded knights, and protecting the non-combatants from the audience. But why? If not for Schutaria's shield, we would have been... Brunhilde shook her head. Recall that Dunkelfrugger does not have Schutaria's shield to rely on. Is it not due to the weakness of our apprentice knights that we could not heal ourselves or protect those in the audience without Lady Rosamund's assistance? It was a sharp criticism delivered with narrowed eyes. Despite what Brunhilde said, Matthias believed that she was ignoring one important detail. It had been Rosamund's desire to make both make and maintain the shield. Lady Rosamund made her shield with a wish to protect everyone. Are her noble actions and spirit not to be respected? They are, however, Lady Rosamund's health and safety come first. We, her retainers, failed to act upon that fact. Her firm amber eyes fell on Matthias and Lorenz. This is not like when she was overflowing with mana and needed to give some to others. We, the students of Ehrenfest, forced her to go beyond her limits and use more potions than she was prescribed to her by Lord Ferdinand for her personal doctor. We know Lady Rosamund is frail enough that even attending tea parties causes her to collapse, so why did we not intervene? Why are we treating what happened as normal instead of reflecting on ourselves or regretting our misdeeds? Brunhilde's revelation came as such a shock to Matthias that he felt as though someone had just punched him in the back of the head. She was completely right. They were all well aware of Rosamund's poor health. And while she had more mana than most, her supply was far from infinite. She too would run out if she used too much at once. And yet, even though Rosamund had needed to use rejuvenation potions just to maintain the shield, Matthias had not been at all worried about her giving blessings or using mana. He had felt concerned upon seeing her ashen face, but he had not stopped to question how his dependence on her had caused it. Brunhilde, I'm ever so sorry, Lorenz said. We ended up in this situation because I made Lady Rosamund's shield an integral part of our plan. Lady Rosamund was motivated to use it, and it likely was essential to our victory. I would not have volunteered to participate in the match, if not for that shield. That said, the battle ended the moment Lady Handler left Dunkelfugger's base, did it not? We should have dispelled the shield then and there, making Lady Rosamund's health our top priority. As her retainer, I am ashamed that I was unable to. The apprentice knights had been free to leave the training grounds as soon as the battle was over and could have spent time recovering somewhere safe. Those in the audience could have defended themselves for the most part. That was why all students were taught to use Getelt. As for Charlotte, her guard knights could have flown up to protect her. Brunhilde's regrets must have stemmed from her being an attendant, Matthias thought. Her viewpoint was different from that of the knights. I regret my actions as well, Lorenz said, then shot a worried glance in the direction of Rosamund's room. I should not have let her heal that unconscious Dunkelfugger apprentice. She was in a much worse state than he was. Matthias blinked. It was his firm understanding that a retainer's duty was to grant the wishes of their lord or lady and nothing more. Yet even Lenore, a guard knight, was agreeing with Brunhilde. What is causing them to think like this? This wasn't just a difference between attendants and guard knights. Lenore and Judith both agreed with Brunhilde's position. Rather, it was something more fundamental separating his thinking from theirs. This was far from ideal. Contrasting ideas of the role of a retainer will possibly lead to misunderstandings or conflict in the future. Matthias wanted to understand their thoughts and intentions before that happened. So you say, he interjected, his voice cracking out of anxiety. But Lady Rosamund wished to heal the knight, and he was certainly wounded enough to need it. Is it not the duty of a retainer to grant the wishes of the lord or lady? That is not always the case, Brunhilde replied flatly. Lenore looked contemplative for a moment, then muttered, I suppose the two of you should know this now that you are name sworn. She looked at Matthias and Lorenz. What I am about to tell you was told to me by Cornelius, as it happened before we all entered Lady Rosamund's service. 4 years ago, Lady Rosamund's retainers worked only to grant her wishes with no other thoughts in mind. Rosamund had gone off from her high beast to save Charlotte, who had been kidnapped by Viscount Joisenstock. Her guard knights had separated from her to be as ordered, determined to grant her every wish, and during that brief moment, Rosamund herself had been kidnapped. Lenore continued, her guard knights put her wants above all else, and the consequence was their lady spending 2 years in a Derive. No matter how much gratitude they received from Charlotte, her retainers, or the archducal couple, the guard's charge remained in a coma. As time passed, her presence in the minds of the people grew increasingly thin, and she became more and more forgotten. Their lady eventually awoke to find that life had continued without her. She had missed 2 years of education and growth. A noble society would not wait for her emotions to stabilize. How do you think Lady Rosemine's guard knights felt seeing their lady, whom they failed to protect, being sent to the Royal Academy before she could catch up to the present? Just imagining their pain put a bad taste in Matthias's mouth. Neither he nor Lorenz could say anything. We cannot allow history to repeat itself, Lenore concluded. To that end, we must understand that simply granting the wishes of whomever you serve is not enough. Lady Rosamine in particular is extraordinarily creative and motivated, but she does not have nearly enough stamina to keep up with herself. To complicate matters further, her warped understanding of noble culture, due in part to her upbringing in the temple, means she is often not on the same page as the rest of us. Matthias and Lorenz listened carefully. Roderick had told them how to serve their new lady as members of the Veronica faction, but this was something more elementary. It was a lesson on how to serve the being that was Rosamine. You must be careful about Lord Wolfrid as well, Brunhilde noted. That boy always looks down on Lady Rosamine. From there she launched into an anger-filled rant. It seemed that Wolfrid was guilty of quite a few infuriating offenses that only retainers would notice. Each was trivial on its own, but just as an ever-growing stack of rocks would eventually form a mountain, his list of sins had created such a downward spiral that the girls serving Rosamine were openly furious. Sorry. There had been a few occasions when he's annoyed me as well. Brunhilde continued, my opinion of him improved slightly when he accepted this game of Ditter, but from the halfway point of the match, through the discussion with royalty, he only seemed to care about Lady Hannelore this, Lady Hannelore that. Well, I think we should be a bit more considerate here, Matthias said. Ehrenfest only won because he got Lady Hannelore out of her base after she was left there all alone. I will take that into consideration, but Lady Rosamund was still white as a sheet. I am furious that he had the time to worry about an Archduke candidate from another duchy, but not about his own fiancée, as she fought to protect everyone from Ehrenfest all on her own. He was at least a little worried about her, Lorenz said, trying to protect Wilfrid, but Brunhilde shot him a glare so fierce that he started to wonder whether looks really could kill. Lenora gave Brunhilde a consoling pat on the back while looking between Lorenz and Matthias. Lord Wolfrid was celebrating our victory alongside everyone else, was he not? He expressed his relief that the royal family's interrogation ended without any unreasonable demands or complaints. Yet he offered not a word of gratitude to Lady Rosamine, nor did he express any concern for her health, even though she maintained the shield for everyone else's sake. His only words were that collapsing is normal for her. Thinking back, that was true. Matthias had definitely been worried about Rosamine, but even as she was carried away half unconscious in the presence of the royal family, his only thoughts had been, this always happens, and she should wake up before long. He inhaled sharply, having not realized just how much time had warped his perspective. I think that was because Lord Wolfrid didn't want to worry anyone, Judith said. Even I could tell that. He can't give detailed reports without Lady Rosamine is asleep. And even so, Brunhilde said, interrupting her. A full year has passed since their engagement. Lady Rosamine is always working herself to death for Ehrenfest, but not once has he even deigned to prepare a get-well present for her. I am so frustrated with him. This is normal, he says. How can it be when this is her first time collapsing from using too many rejuvenation potions during a game of Ditter? He should know better, shouldn't he? Brunhilde was getting heated again, her eyes blazing with anger. It was clear how deeply she cared about her lady. Plus, if even Brunhilde, someone who usually disguised her true feelings so well, was this openly furious, one could only imagine how Hartman would react. I don't even want to think about it. Oh god, yeah. Yeah, if you explained all this to him, he probably would have gone full, he would have gone, pulled a Ferdinand on us and scared Wolfrid to death. Matthias quickly elected to push Hartman from his mind and instead proposed improvements for their relationship with Wolfrid. In that case, we could prompt Lord Wolfrid to visit her by suggesting as much to his attendants. A kind gesture should not need to be coerced. It is pointless unless it comes from the heart, Lenore sounded, sounding no less angry than Brunhilde. That said, while Brunhilde is rather mad about it, I am not too concerned about whether he visits her. Boys are not allowed on the third floor of the dormitory, and in a political marriage, it is best not to show your partner any weakness to begin with. At this sudden declaration, Matthias saw Lorenz twitch in fear. My issue, she continued, is that Lord Wolfrid seems to bemoan the interruption of our dinner game and view it as having somehow soiled our victory. Dunkelfelder put aside all excuses and sentimentality to acknowledge their defeat, yet that boy still sought a rematch in the presence of the royal family, saying he was unsatisfied with the resolution. It was absolutely unfathomable. Lenore's anger was so extreme that her usually indigo eyes had started to shake. She's starting to lose control of her mana. She's starting to do the crushing. In response to her rant, Matthias gave a small nod of agreement. Wilfrid always went on about not wanting to protest the decisions of others, and how those at the bottom of the rankings should obey those at the top. So why, Matthias wondered, had he decided to throw all that out the window at the worst possible moment? Lenore sighed. The boy is a blithering fool. That I already knew, but I thought he would at least have the intelligence to recognize our enemy's strength after we had just faced them in battle. Does he genuinely wish to protect Lady Rosemine? He should be using any means necessary to succeed and thanking the gods for every victory. To prioritize anything else is appalling, is it not? It was Lorenz who offered a response. I mean, as a guard knight, I have to agree that our half-baked victory was kind of, Lorenz, you fool! Don't talk back to them! No, stop! Oh, God. But alas, Matthias' internal screams did not reach his unfortunate friend. Lorenz was unable to even finish his thought before Lenore interrupted him with a calm smile. Lorenz, it appears you are not fit to be a guard knight. I shall consult Lord Bonifacius and have him increase the intensity of your training together. What? Lorenz blinked, not understanding her intentions. Lenore looked to Judith and said, Judith, state the way of the guard knight. Prioritize the safety of your lord or lady above all else, no matter what, came her sharp, crisp declaration. Use any means necessary to protect them. And she was far from being insincere. After she had spread her cape to protect Lady Rosemine from Rarstark, it was clear she had believed and practiced those words without compromise. Lorenz, chant those words to yourself, day in and day out, Lenore said. Chant them until every fiber of your being knows that protecting Lady Rosemine is far more important than the nature of one's victory. You may have given your name, but if you cannot protect your lady without being ordered to, then you will be of no use as a guard knight. She was wearing a smile, but her words were gravely serious and scathing enough to burn one's ears. Lorenz was already shrinking back from Lenore's fury. I apologize. I did not understand what it means to be a guard knight, he said. However, Lord Wilfrid is not Lady Rosemine's guard knight, so he may not be her guard knight, but he is her fiancé, and their engagement is entirely for his sake. He cannot become the next Ob without Lady Rosemine by his side, and it is hard to say how much authority he will wield as an Archduke candidate of the disgraced former Veronica faction now that the purge has been carried out. Do you understand that, I wonder? I wonder myself, Brunhilde agreed. It is precisely because their marriage is political that Lord Wilfrid must be especially careful about how he acts. It would have been so easy for him to gain some favor with Lady Rosemine by gifting her a single book on her sickbed or even writing her a letter. Through his engagement to Rosemine, Wilfrid now had the grounds to make the nobles of the Liesgang faction his allies, thereby allowing him to become the next Ob. Those were the rumors, at least. Matthias couldn't remember hearing anything of the sort from within the former Veronica faction. He instinctively spoke with having noticed that their factions had contrasting interpretations of events. Is that how it looks to the Liesgangs? In our faction, it was said that Lord Wilfrid is becoming the next Ob to maintain balance now that the Lady Veronica faction has been weakened more than intended. He was merely hoping to show that there were misunderstandings to be corrected, but his efforts earned him disappointed sighs from Lenore and Brunhilde. My, how embarrassingly naive. If the nobles of the former Veronica faction truly believe that, then Lord Wilfrid will never improve his attitude. His attitude, Matthias echoed. Even during the royal family's inquiry, Lord Wilfrid obeyed the advice given to him by Oswald and stifled our opinions, forcing Ehrenfest to comply meekly with everyone else's desires, Lenore said. And this was far from the first time, wasn't it? Brunhilde nodded in agreement. He only listens to his retainers. Not once has he ever considered or even asked for our opinion. Is it really so unreasonable that we wanted him to speak with us, or with Lady Rosemond before he responds to people? Matthias swallowed hard. During the inquiry, Lenore had suggested that Ehrenfest take advantage of Dunkelfelger's request and participate in the questioning of the intruders. Matthias had been in full agreement, but Wilfrid had chosen to obey Oswald and say as little as possible to those ranked above him. I also remember being taken aback by what Lord Wilfrid said, though it was far from for another reason than those two. But those thoughts had been pushed from his mind until now. After all, what he had noticed after the incident the girls were referring to had been far more important. He was racking his brain trying to remember what it was when Judith got between him and Lenore. Brunhilde, Lenore, please calm down, she said. You're making Matthias and Lorenz really uncomfortable. They may have given their names, but they're still from the former Veronica faction. It must be hard for them to endure people criticizing Lord Wilfrid so openly, right? She was looking at the two boys expectantly, but Lorenz merely grimaced. Judith, don't make things worse for us. Matthias gave a half smile. He consoled Judith, who hadn't quite managed to read the room, and then said, "My silence wasn't out of discomfort. I was just remembered something else about the inquiry that stood out to me." "Oh, something else?" Brunhilde asked, blinking in surprise. Back when Lord Lustelot stated his intention to petition the king, Lord Wilfrid argued that the matter was not worth such serious action. Members of the Sovereign Knights Order had mobilized without an order from the king. As a guard knight, Matthias thought it was important to find out what had inspired their rash insubordination. Yet Wilfrid had outright rejected the idea. He was going to be Ehrenfest's next Archduke. Was he not worried that a similar incident might arise from within his own knight's order? It had felt like he was literally incapable of picturing such a serious danger. Also, did anyone else smell something sweet in the air, Matthias asked? At last he had broached the primary reason for gathering everyone in the first place. At once everybody fell into thought, drawn in by his serious expression. Lorenz was for the first to look up. "You're not talking about the Rinsham the girls use, right, Matthias? Whose smell caught your interest?" "Lorenz, come on, I wouldn't bring up such a topic at a time like this." Matthias couldn't tell whether Lorenz was joking or being serious, so he just silenced him and turned to the others. He made eye contact with Brunhilde next, but she shook her head. "I did not notice anything in particular. Even if something had caught my attention at the time, I would not have remembered it unless it were especially strong." All of a sudden, Lorenz's head shot up. "Matthias, don't tell me." Eleanor's head shot up. Matthias caught her gaze and nodded. "It is highly likely that Trug was used on the Knight's Order." "Come again?" "As I went to say farewell to Prince Anastasius, I noticed a sweet familiar scent in the air. I traced it as best I could and found that it was coming from the knights tied up on the ground. At the time, I struggled to place it, but after returning to the dormitory and seeing the fireplace, Lady Georgine's smile suddenly arose in my mind." From there, Matthias had immediately connected the dots, but it seemed that nobody else had noticed. The thought sent a chill down his spine. Brunhilde and Judith were both wearing stiff expressions as well. "Through the purge, it came to our attention that Trug is a dangerous plant," Lenore said. "However, none of us are familiar with the scent or the like. You were the only one who could have noticed, Matthias." Judith nodded. "The incense could have been burning right in front of me, and I still wouldn't have known that it was Trug. It really is dangerous." The fireplace being lit during that summer party was a cause for alarm, but during this season, burning Trug would be simple, wouldn't it? Lenore asked. Matthias nodded. At this time of year, a person could easily burn Trug without anyone suspecting a thing. "I know very little about it myself," Lenore said. "I can only hope the Sovereign Knight nobles investigating these three knights will notice." After hearing her harsh words for the former Veronica faction, Matthias had assumed that Lenore would immediately doubt him. But she was actually trusting his opinion. The discussion proceeded as if everyone accepted that Trug had been used on the Sovereign Knights. "I should note that I'm not entirely sure of my assertion," Matthias clarified. "I might be mistaken. Really, he hoped that he was. The very thought of Trug having been used on the Sovereign Knights Order was nightmarish. However, Lenore was far more pragmatic. In the past, Lady Georgine used Trug as part of a scheme to harm Lady Rosemine. This time, it was used to interrupt a game of Ditter, during which Lady Rosemine's engagement was on the line. It would not be unreasonable to assume that there is something connecting two mutual opponents of Our Lady. Rather than being concerned for the sake of the Knight's Order, Lenore is focused on how the Trug was being used in relation to Rosemine. Matthias realized then that her perspective was completely different from his own. Maybe such an extreme sensitivity to danger was needed to be a guard knight? "You were right not to mention the Trug then and there, Matthias. Dunkelfelger or the royal family might have begun to suspect that Ehrenfest was responsible. We cannot take action without Our Lady, so for now let us wait for her to awaken and recover." Matthias nodded. Lenore, Lady Rosemine's head guard knight in the Royal Academy, was fully focused on granting her lady's wishes, but her approach was entirely her own. Awakening and reports. Upon opening my eyes, the first person I saw was Riarda looking at me with an incredibly relieved expression. "Milady, how are you feeling?" she asked. She asked, helping me to sit up. "If you want something to eat, I shall have food prepared at once." I drank some of the water she offered me, then lay back down. My head was still fuzzy from my fever, and I didn't have an appetite. "I truly am relieved," she continued. "It was trying on my heart knowing that I could only wait for you to awaken. This time we were unable to even aid you with rejuvenation potions. My fever had apparently skyrocketed while I was unconscious, sending my helpless attendants into a nervous panic. But even then, there was traces around my bed that they had done whatever they could to cool me down." "Riarda, I apologize for worrying you," I said. "Next time, no matter what happens, please do not drink more potions than you have been prescribed." I tried to nod in response, but I wasn't sure whether I actually managed to. A pleasant feeling like cold water spread through my body, and my eyes slowly drooped shut again. The next time I awoke, someone was holding my hand. I supposed that it was probably Riarda. My whole body was still too heavy for me to move right away, so I set up for turning my head. As I did, I realized that it wasn't Riarda holding my head, but Brunhilde. She was kneeling by my bedside, looking down at me with pain and regret clear on her face. It was rare to see her express her emotions so openly, since she was a very proper noble. I blinked as best I could and said, "I'm fine," hoping to see the same look of relief that Riarda had given me. But her expression remained unchanged. Instead, she screwed her eyes tightly shut and began to apologize. "Lady Rosamund, I am truly sorry. This is my fault. Had I not fainted during our dinner game, this would not have happened. I am a failure of an attendant for not having stopped you from drinking in excess of rejuvenation potions. I certainly hadn't expected Brunhilde to feel this responsible for my rejuvenation potion antics. At the time, my only focus had been winning the game at all costs. It took all of my energy, but I managed to turn my head to meet Brunhilde's gaze. "No, this is not your fault," I said to her. "I was the one who determined that the potions were necessary." "Perhaps, but it was my duty to prioritize your health above all else and stop you. I lost consciousness at a crucial moment and failed to carry out my duty as an attendant. By that logic, it was my fault for having asked Brunhilde to participate in our dinner game in the first place. She had a considerable amount of mana, but she had never been trained for combat. I will say it as many times as it takes. This is not your fault, Brunhilde. I drank them simply because I did not wish to lose. Because if she lost, she would have been forced to marry into Dunkelfogger. So yeah, couldn't afford to lose." Brunhilde tried to protest, still unconvinced, but Lazeletta pulled the bed curtain aside before she could. "Brunhilde, do leave it at that," she said, as she came to join us. "I understand your feelings of regret, but you're going to tire Lady Rosamund out when she has only now awoken, whatever." That was enough to snap Brunhilde back to reality. She let go of my hand and stood, shutting off her emotions once again. There was likely still a storm of regret raging in her heart, but she didn't allow it to show. After helping me drink some water, she used washing to clean the sweat off my body. "Brunhilde, you are an excellent attendant," I said. "I do not consider you a failure at all. Rather, I am more concerned about my own failures that put a black mark on your work record." "A black mark? Not at all. This is simply a personal regret of mine. That said, please do avoid drinking too many potions going forward." I promised at once. The last thing I wanted was for my retainers to look so haggard with worry as Brunhilde did now, but that thought crossed my mind, my consciousness faded again. Even after my mind cleared, I was made to stay in bed until my fever disappeared completely. That much was the standard routine, but I could tell that I really had worried everyone. They were a lot more active than usual. I accepted their warnings and care without being selfish about wanting to read books. One day, Lazeletta brought me a stuffed shoemale. It had navy fur, golden eyes, and a face stone on its stomach. "What do you think, Lady Rosamund?" she asked. She ended up quite adorable in my honest opinion. "She's wonderful, Lazeletta. It was a stuffed toy and sound recording magic tool that Raymond had designed, which I intended to fill with messages for Ferdinand. Personally, I wanted the toy to be a red panda like Leslie, but I ended up caving to Lazeletta's overwhelming love of shoemales. I'd entrusted her with making it since I didn't have any time to spare, but I'd never expected her to finish it so quickly. I hugged the stuffed shoemale while laying on my side. It was the perfect size and just soft enough for hugging. The face was cute as well, and I could feel all the love that Lazeletta had poured into it. This must be the sound recording face stone, I said, touching the face stone on the navy plush's stomach. I registered my mana with it, then immediately got to work recording some messages. "Ferdinand, are you resting properly? Do be reasonable with your workload. No matter how busy you are, you won't have the strength to work if you don't eat. And don't just rely on potions, you need food as well." Once I was done, I checked to see whether the shoemale repeated my messages properly. It did. Amazing! This will definitely ensure that Ferdinand maintained a healthy lifestyle, even in Arensbach. Oh, who am I kidding? He'll never use this. You're probably right about that one. He probably won't. He'll probably just get annoyed at it and toss it in the corner. No, actually, I think he would keep it. He just probably wouldn't use it. He'd probably just, set it on his desk or something. Back in the temple, whenever his attendants or I spoke to him, he had almost always said, "Cease interrupting me." Ferdinand would just throw this in a box, never to be seen again, I mused aloud, staring down at the shoemale. Maybe I should gift it to Justice instead so he can bring it out when necessary. Actually, give it to Eckert. He would do that. They both would, actually, so never mind. As I continued to ponder, Feline came in with several letters. "Lady Rose, my letters from Ehrenfest and Lady Letizia of Arensbach have arrived. It would be best to read them before the introductory tournament." Lazeletta and Brunhilde stepped back, allowing her to approach my bedside. Feline smiled as she handed me the letters. As an apprentice scholar, it was her duty to have checked the contents before giving them to me. This letter appears to be the one of the task that Lord Ferdinand set for Lady Letizia. Apparently, it was important for young nobles to practice sending letters to other duchies through the border gates rather than straight to their intended recipient. Letizia's aim was to successfully convey her position while at the same time accounting for the nobles of opposing factions within her own duchy. The border guards and the nobles from the other duchy who would read it. Huh, neat. So a normal archduke candidates do tasks like this before entering the Royal Academy. I probably would have done the same had I not ended up asleep in a Jareve. No doubt I would have learned any number of noble phrases and exchanges in the process. This letter seems to be a task for you as well, Feline continued. It says here that you need to send a response that will serve as an example to Lady Letizia using all the phrasing expected of a noble. Oh no, Feline, I seem to have developed a fever. I'm still unwell, so giving me a task from Ferdinand is just plain cruel. He even told me to use proper noble phrasing. My worst enemy! I appreciated that Ferdinand was trying to educate us both at once, but my sheer displeasure was clear as day. My retainers giggled at the sight of me agonizing over this unexpected task. I believe your response to Lady Letizia can wait until this academic term has ended, Laisleta said. Oh my, but if she intends to deliver it to Lord Ferdinand during this year's graduation, is sooner not better, Brunhilde replied. He will be attending to escort his fiancée after all. My retainers, whose faces had previously looked drawn out of regret and concern for my health, were now smiling and bantering with each other. It was so nice to see, I thought, as I opened my first letter from Letizia. I made sure to savor the crinkling of the paper and the scent of the ink before beginning to read. I'll read this first to finish the task from Ferdinand as soon as possible. I said, let's see here. By the time you read this, Lady Rosemine, will the Royal Academy term have ended already? Lord Ferdinand recently mentioned during one of our tutoring sessions that you finished your classes early. He said it's only a matter of time before you collapse from ill health, but I hope that does not happen. My wish is that you are doing well. From what I am told, you are an excellent student indeed. I myself am spending my days studying and working on the tasks that Lord Ferdinand gives me. The letter was normal up until that point, but everything else was filled with so many allusions to the gods that I couldn't keep my brow from furrowing. She says here that Ferdinand's teachings follow the direction of Washoren. That's the god of guidance, I think. He's involved with those who educate others, like teachers and instructors, but what does that mean exactly? Considered alongside this line about Verdrena's visit changing the seasons, maybe she means to say that she's thankful for her new learning environment under Ferdinand? So is she indirectly bragging about how good a teacher he has? But no, this bit about the winter subordinate gods can also be interpreted as her struggling with the change. Before I knew it, Riarda had come to my side. My lady, let us read it together, she said. A response founded in misunderstandings will be quite disastrous. Please and thank you. Zero confidence in my reading comprehension, so I accepted Riarda's offer without a moment's hesitation. For some reason, I just couldn't seem to grasp the proper meaning of the ambiguous, context-heavy writing patterns that nobles used. During conversations, I could at least make an educated guess based on the other person's tone and expression, but that wasn't possible through text alone. After rereading the passage with the help from Riarda and Brunhilde, it became clear that Laisleta considered Ferdinand an exceptionally skilled individual and a talented instructor. She thought it was very impressive for having been able to keep up with his teachings, but she was troubled that he expected her to meet the same standards. The one thing consoling her amid the intense education was my sweets. She included her thanks for them. Oh no, this is a letter about how Ferdinand is way too demanding. Letizia was practically begging to know how I'd survived Ferdinand piling me with one back-breaking task after another and giving me his nerve-wracking, harsh glare. I had nothing but sympathy for her. I know how you feel. Oh, how I know Ferdinand always gives work by the truckload, and every task is hard. I can put my all into the ones that involved reading, but everything else was such a pain. I just wanted to toss them all aside. Helping out Letizia felt like the right thing to do, after all. I had promised to give Ferdinand a talking to if he started being too strict. Brunhilde summoned Laisleta, I said. Upon her arrival, I asked her to make another stuffed shoe mill. According to this letter, I continued, Lady Letizia is struggling to endure the intensity of Ferdinand's training. We need to give her a few words to stop him. I started thinking about what message to record on the shoe mill. Do not be too harsh when speaking would do, or perhaps I would like some praise when I do well. Maybe, I hope you will praise me for working hard today. Surely any of those would make Ferdinand realize he was being too demanding. Before I replied to Lady Letizia, can I go into my hidden room and read my letter from Ferdinand, I asked. My retainers had softened up and seemed more lively again, so as I tried to climb out of bed. Instantly, Riarda put on a forceful smile. My lady, you should wait until your fever has gone completely. Lisletta nodded. We would have you prioritize your health for now, Lady Rosamond. Your male retainers cannot visit you here and have been worried this entire time. In the end, it wasn't until 3 days after our game of bride-taking dinner that I wasn't able to get out of bed. Are you truly well, I was asked. You can rest more if you would like. My fever has gone down, and I am eager to eat normal food. Furthermore, while you all seem intent on hiding it, there are important reports for me to listen to regarding the dinner game and the royal family, are there not? I went to the dining hall and ate with everyone to show that I was healthy again, then went with my retainers to a meeting room to receive their reports. Wilfrid, Charlotte, and their retainers followed. Ehrenfest proclaimed the match to be null and void due to the sudden interruption, but Dunkelfelger refused, arguing that the judge did not issue a ceasefire. Wilfrid explained. They saved the match, ended the moment Lady Handler left their base for the safety of your shield. I hate that, though. It makes it seem like I tricked her. His arms were crossed in an obvious show of displeasure, but I didn't share his feelings at all. If those from Dunkelfelger believe they lost, then all the better. Ehrenfest will not be able to endure a rematch. However, I do agree that our victory was not entirely sound. I suggest we drop all this about Lady Handler marrying into Ehrenfest and get them to agree to stop fighting our engagement in return. Wilfrid appeared to brighten in an instant. Right, that would be fitting. Lord Lestelot said all that stuff about dinner being divine and that they would honor our agreement no matter what. But the Ops can negotiate the terms during the Interduchy tournament. Negotiating with a dinner-obsessed duchy like Dunkelfelger sounded annoying if nothing else. But since we had won our game against them, everything would probably turn out alright. Also, Wilfrid continued, Prince Anastasius gave us a few choice words about not letting this kind of thing happen again. He said that the next time it does, the royal family will take you for themselves. Basically, he feels I'm not capable of protecting you. Excuse me? Wilfrid was slumping his shoulders, looking dejected, but I didn't have a clue why the royal family were involving themselves in the first place. I looked around for an explanation and eventually locked eyes with Charlotte. Sister, we received a report from the sovereignty while you were asleep. As it turns out, Prince Hildebrand mentioned our dinner game to the Sovereign Knights Order. Hildebrand had apparently revealed that Dunkelfelger was trying to steal the Saint of Ehrenfest, even though my engagement had already been approved by the king. Anastasius had admonished him for this, and maintaining that the royal family was in no position to interfere. My engagement had received the king's permission, but it wasn't the result of a royal decree. In other words, it was a matter to be decided between Obs. So did Prince Hildebrand order them to interfere, I asked? Perhaps my conversation with Hannelore in the Underground Archive had been the catalyst for all this madness. No, Charlotte replied. The Sovereign Knight's Order admonished him when he spoke to them and made no attempt to involve themselves. His retainers and several of the Royal Academy professors confirmed this. Furthermore, Prince Hildebrand had never even met the knights who intruded on our game. He was too presumably to blame for them having learned about it, though, so he received a scolding from Prince Anastasius nonetheless. That only confirmed my suspicions. In other words, Lady Hannelore and I are partially to blame as well for discussing the game near him. It was scary how even the smallest exchange or attempt to carry out justice would cause such a huge incident. I sighed. The more time passes, the less I want anything to do with the royal family. Why would they try to take me in? I'm just a troublemaker causing the problems. It didn't make sense, especially when Anastasius lectured me so much whenever I went to his villa. The king was there for the Royal Academy's dedication ritual, remember, Charlotte said? If they think Ehrenfest is prepared to send you to another duchy, then they would rather take you for themselves. But it wasn't easy for the royal family to intervene, no matter how much they wanted me to join them. Direct interference, like sending the Sovereign Knight's Order to keep Dunkelfelger from winning my hand in marriage, was out of the question and would only make them appear untrustworthy. On top of that, they had already sent Ferdinand to Arensbach by royal decree. Reducing the size of Ehrenfest's archducal family any further would risk impacting our foundation. With these factors in mind, the royal family was holding back on claiming me, at least for now. They made it very clear that they won't get any more chances, Wilfrid said, still dour. If we cause another fuss like this in the Royal Academy, they will take you. He wasn't the only one feeling depressed about having failed to protect me. My retainers were the same. I had already woken to them expressing their regret at how things had turned out, and bemoaning all the things they could have done better. Let us simply be glad they have spared us this time and resolved not to cause a fuss again, I said. Most importantly, what happened to the knights and students who interrupted our game? Wilfrid straightened his back and put on a serious face. As they believed they were carrying out the will of the Zent, the students are going unquestioned. Professor Roffin really broke his back for them. The sovereign knights who riled them up and joined the attack will receive a harsh punishment from the king himself, since they falsely used his name. He thought of them as loyal vassals before, so his wrath and disappointment are extreme, apparently. It seems odd to me that such loyal knights would suddenly start acting of their own accord, I said, and it was then that Matthias raised a hand. As seeking my permission to speak, I granted it. Matthias prefaced that he didn't have any concrete evidence to prove what he was about to reveal, and then said it is possible that Trug was used on them. Wait, do you mean that stuff? As I recalled, a Trug was a plant that could be used to disturb memories and create hallucinations. It was the same thing the Georgine faction had used during their meetings. I noticed a sweet scent coming from the restrained knights when I approached Prince Anastasius to say my farewells. At the time, I couldn't quite pinpoint why the smell seemed familiar, but it came back to me when I turned to the dormitory and saw the fireplace. There is a chance I am mistaken, though, as I did not smell it carefully. But you must be fairly confident to have decided to tell me, I said. Matthias was always conservative. He wouldn't have spoken unless he had given the situation a lot of thought and come to a conclusion that he believed in. We would have a better idea if we could observe their memories. Indeed, if their memories were distorted, then it was likely that the 3 knights had been manipulated by someone else. Would the royal family be able to work out during their questioning, or was this something we should tell them? Is Trug common in the Royal Academy and the Sovereignty, I asked. Not at all, replied one of Charlotte's apprentice scholars, all of whom were taking on an apothecary class. If it were, then everyone would recognize it as a dangerous substance. I expect it is a specialty plant unique to one duchy. That made sense. The royal family and sovereign knights wouldn't necessarily know about every single specialty plant from every single duchy. We should ask Ob Ehrenfest for his permission before we inform the royal family that Trug might have been used, I said. A feeling of unease stirred in my chest. Was it really a coincidence that we were encountering Trug again, and so soon after the previous incident? Maybe one of Georgine's connections was in a position that allowed him to manipulate the knights of the Sovereign Knights Order? If so, then perhaps Georgine will find it much easier to return to Ehrenfest than any of us expected. I reached up and touched the rainbow face stones dangling from my hair stick, and my heart started to beat faster. I think I'll be good for the moment. I will see everybody in the next video. I'll have to edit this a lot.